Here's a riddle. What living creature could this be? Some are left-handed, some are right-handed. They taste with their feet, and they have their teeth in their stomach. Their brain is in their throat, and their kidneys are in their head. Some say it screams when you drop it into a pot of boiling water. The answer is not only surprising, but can be found on your dinner table. This is All Request History. If you've ever wondered about the history of, anything, you're in the right place. Send us your request in the comments, and if chosen, we'll produce, record, and post your history request. Thanks this time to Dave C. of Danbury, Connecticut for requesting the history of the Lobster Dinner. Nowadays, you can get a lobster dinner for $20 or $30 at Red Lobster, or even splurge and spend $400 for a 4-chew lobster dinner in New York City. But they used to be the poor man's chicken. When Europeans first settled in the region, now known as North America, they discovered crowded beaches, crowded with mounds and mounds of lobsters. There were so many of the crustaceans washed up on the shores, they sometimes were piled 2 feet high. From as far back as the 15th century, it is thought that there was an abundance of these crustaceans living in the shores of the region. The Puritans learned that Native Americans were using these lobsters for fertilizer, jewelry, and of course, food. So since there's no actual record in history of a very first person to look at a lobster and say, I'd love to eat that, we can trace its roots back to what some historians call the first cultural celebration, Thanksgiving. Native Americans taught the colonists to wrap them in seaweed, heat them on hot rocks to steam them, crack them open, and enjoy the protein-rich meat. This is also often thought of as the origin of the traditional New England clam bake. Now, if you're not from the Northeast, you're missing quite a picnic. In the 1700s, because they were so plentiful, they were nicknamed poor man's chicken and usually served to prisoners, slaves, poor families, and even used as pig feed. In the 1800s, as settlements matured and became more populous, commercial fishermen found ways to catch lobster and even harvest them and bring them to market. Fishermen in the lobster-rich waters of Maine went on to develop special boats called smacks. They were equipped with large saltwater tanks to keep their catch alive until returning to port. Lobster meat spoils less than 24 hours after they're killed, so to prep the meat for sale, they were gutted, cut up, and then salted and canned. As rail transportation started connecting towns and cities with each other, more inland businesses were able to supply customers with canned lobster meat. The Maine fishermen, who called themselves smackmen, they knew, however, that eating them right after they were killed is when they tasted their absolute best. The fresh lobster started gaining a reputation, and trainmen started serving lobsters to passengers, quote, fresh off the boat. Smackmen learned to adapt their saltwater tanks to trains so they could be shipped to big cities for more profit. New York City restaurateurs began charging top dollar for fresh lobster dinner. Then they went on to prepare them in a variety of different ways, discovering dishes like lobster bisque, lobster roll, lobster Newburg, and even lobster tail, the meatiest part. The reputation of the poor man's chicken certainly began to wane. At the beginning of the industrial 1900s, the overabundance of lobsters began to lessen. No longer washing up on shores at all, they became a prime commodity. There was a period of time in the mid-1900s that lobsters were almost declared an endangered species. Now here's some more fun lobster facts. They're actually colored brown and green. They don't become that pretty red and orange color until they're cooked. An equal serving of lobster has less calories than chicken and more vitamins, B12, E, B6, and of course, plenty of that omega-3 fatty acid. If not grabbed up for dinner, they live an average of 50 years. The most expensive lobster dinner is thought to be the $400 4-chew lobster restaurant at Aquabest Seafood in New York City. And they do have a crazy anatomy. Their teeth are in their stomach, brain in their throats, kidneys in their head, and they taste with their feet. Studies have oddly shown that some lobsters are right-handed, some are left-handed, although they probably taste the same. The largest lobster ever caught was 100 years old, 44 pounds, and at 3 feet long would just about fit on your kitchen counter. It was caught in Nova Scotia in 1988. And lastly, those elastic bands that they put on their claws? That's for their protection, not ours. Lobsters are naturally cannibalistic and they'll attack each other in the tank in close quarters if not restrained with those rubber bands. Now, lobsters are not without controversy because home preparation includes sometimes cutting them in half between the eyes or microwaving them alive or dropping their live body in a pot of scalding hot water. Some folks won't even cook them at home because it's too disturbing. They say that they scream and they cling to the side of the boiling pot as if to hold on for their lives. Now you have to wonder, is that an urban legend? According to David Foster, author of the book Consider the Lobster, that is not a scream. He says on the rare occasion when you hear a noise, it's air escaping from the shell. And they don't cling for their life because they have no cerebral cortex. And that's the part of the brain that processes pain, so they never even feel it. Well, personally, I love a great steak, but I wouldn't slaughter a cow in my own kitchen. So if you like lobster, head to a nice seafood place and order up a lobster Newburg. Well, thanks for checking in. Are you curious? You can leave your request in the comments and then subscribe here so you'll know when you're on All Request History.